In a crowded shelter full of noise and chaos, one dog sat silent. He didn't bark, didn't wag his tail. He simply waited, his eyes dull yet searching. Staff wondered why this German Shepherd seemed so different, why his gaze lingered on every visitor who walked through the doors. Then, one ordinary day, a man stepped inside, and everything changed. The dog's body trembled, tears filled his eyes, and a heartbreaking cry echoed through the room. What the staff didn't know was that this wasn't just another visitor. It was the person the dog had been waiting for all along. A reunion years in the making was about to leave everyone in tears. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The shelter was loud with barking, but in one corner sat a German Shepherd who didn't make a sound. While other dogs wagged their tails, leapt against the bars, and begged for attention, he remained still, his head lowered, his eyes distant. Volunteers whispered about him, saying he was different, broken in a way that couldn't be mended. He didn't growl, he didn't bark. He simply waited, as if he was expecting someone who would never come. Every morning, the staff placed food in front of him, yet he only ate enough to survive. His once strong body had grown thinner, his coat dull from neglect. And when visitors passed by, he didn't rush forward like the others. Instead, he glanced up briefly, then looked away, as though he had already given up on hope. But if anyone looked closely into his eyes, they would see something haunting, an emptiness mixed with longing. It was as though he was holding on to a memory, one too painful to forget. He was not just a shelter dog. He was a soul waiting for something, or someone, that had been cruelly taken away. The staff at the shelter didn't know much about his past. He had been found wandering the outskirts of town, his paws torn and bleeding, his collar worn down to threads. No microchip, no identification, just a name faintly scratched onto the metal tag that still clung to him. Max. It was clear he hadn't been astray all his life. His obedience, his calm posture, even the way he flinched at loud noises all hinted at a history with people. But what had happened? Why was he alone? Sometimes, late at night, when the shelter grew quiet, Max would press his head against the cold metal bars and whimper softly, as though he was calling out to someone. The staff who heard it said it didn't sound like an ordinary cry. It was deeper, heavier, like grief trapped in an animal's chest. They knew he had lost someone important, but no one knew who. Visitors came and went, pausing at his kennel, admiring his noble face. Yet Max never responded the way they hoped. His eyes searched each face desperately, and when he realized it wasn't the one he longed for, he turned away again. His heart was waiting for one person only. One chilly afternoon, the shelter doors creaked open, and in walked a man with gray streaks in his hair and a face carved by years of hardship. His name was Daniel. He wasn't just another visitor searching for a pet. His eyes carried the weight of a question, the kind that had haunted him for years. The staff welcomed him, but Daniel's gaze drifted past the paperwork, past the walls, straight toward the kennels, as though something had called him there. When he reached the row of cages, his steps slowed. Dogs barked, tails wagged, but Daniel hardly noticed. His attention locked on one kennel, where a German Shepherd sat quietly, head lowered, eyes tired. For a heartbeat, time froze. Daniel's breath caught in his chest, his knees weak beneath him. Could it be? He leaned closer to the bars, whispering a name he hadn't spoken in years. Max. At first, the dog didn't move. Then, slowly, his ears perked up. His head lifted, and his dark eyes widened in disbelief. It was as if recognition flickered like a spark in the dim light. Daniel's hands trembled as he pressed them against the bars, whispering again, his voice breaking. Max, is it really you? For a moment, silence filled the room. The German Shepherd stared at Daniel, as if searching deep within his soul. Then, out of nowhere, the dog let out a sound no one expected. It wasn't a bark, it wasn't a growl. It was a trembling whimper, a cry filled with years of longing. His body quivered, his tail began to thump against the cold floor, and tears welled in his eyes. The staff froze, astonished. Dogs didn't usually cry like this. Daniel dropped to his knees, his hands shaking as he reached through the kennel bars. It's me, Max. I never stopped looking for you, he whispered, his own tears streaming down his face. The dog pressed his head against Daniel's hands, whining louder now, his entire body trembling as though he feared this moment wasn't real. The shelter workers watched in stunned silence, their throats tight with emotion, realizing they were witnessing a bond stronger than time itself. The cries grew louder until Max finally let out a broken howl, leaning into Daniel's touch as if to say, "Where were you?" "I waited." Daniel's chest ached, guilt mixing with overwhelming relief. He held the dog's face gently and promised, "I'm here now. I'll never leave you again." As Daniel held Max's trembling face, memories of the past flooded back. Years ago, Daniel's life had unraveled in ways he never imagined. He had lost his job, his home, and in the chaos, he was forced to move into a small apartment that didn't allow pets. With no one to turn to, and his heart breaking, he had entrusted Max to a friend who promised to care for him. But that promise was betrayed. When Daniel tried to reach out months later, he was told Max had run away. For years, he searched, flyers, calls, endless visits to shelters, but hope slowly dimmed. Max's life mirrored Daniel's pain. The friend who should have kept him safe had abandoned him, leaving him to wander the streets. The scars on his paws, the hollow look in his eyes, they told the story of struggle, loneliness, and survival. Every passing day in the shelter was another reminder of the love he had lost. Now, facing each other after so many years, both man and dog carried the weight of those missing moments. Yet in their shared grief was also a fragile miracle. Against all odds, destiny had brought them back together. The bond they thought was gone had never truly been broken. The shelter staff, their eyes glistening with tears, quickly gathered the adoption forms. There was no question, this dog and this man belonged together. Daniel signed the papers with trembling hands, barely able to steady himself as Max pressed against him, refusing to leave his side. When the kennel door finally swung open, Max leapt into Daniel's arms, his body shaking with relief. The room filled with the sound of cries, both human and canine, that no one would ever forget. Walking out of the shelter, Daniel felt a weight lift from his chest. For the first time in years, his heart was whole again. Max trotted proudly beside him, his tail wagging high, his eyes bright with life. People passing by stopped to watch, some even applauding softly, sensing they had witnessed something extraordinary. Daniel whispered, "We're going home, buddy," and Max barked softly in response, as if he understood every word. That night, back at Daniel's modest home, Max curled up at the foot of his bed, just like he had years before. Daniel reached down, running his hand through the dog's fur, promising, "You'll never be alone again." And as Max drifted off to sleep, his breathing steady and peaceful, one truth echoed louder than words. Love remembered is never lost. It only waits to be found again.